All right, so you really want to get your music on Spotify playlists. Huh. I see you sent us a ton of material on this.
Yeah, there's a lot out there.
Articles about pitching to publishers, advice straight from Spotify, tips from industry pros. You've done the research.
Definitely.
Now let's try to make sense of it all.
Yeah, it's smart to go deep on this because honestly, a lot of the advice out there just kind of skims the surface, you know?
Right.
And what I find super interesting is how much of this ties back to how Spotify's algorithms actually work.
Okay, so less about tricks and more about understanding, like, the tech behind the scenes.
Exactly. Like you take that feed the algorithm thing that everyone keeps saying.
Right.
It's not just about filling out your profile. It's about understanding that Spotify uses that data, the genre, the mood, the instruments you list to cluster listeners with similar tastes together.
So the more detailed I am, the better Spotify can connect me with listeners who are already primed to like my sound.
Precisely. Think of it like this. They're trying to draw this musical map.
Hmm.
And the more data points you give them, the more accurate that map becomes.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
Right.
And that makes those cultural influences and backstory sections on your profile
Yes.
seem a lot more important now.
They're not just for fans to browse. They're data points that help Spotify understand your music's DNA
Oh, wow.
and connect you with the right playlists and the right listeners.
Okay, so data is king. I see.
Yeah.
What else has kind of jumped out at you from sifting through all this info?
Well, one thing that surprised me is how often pre-saving gets mentioned, but no one really explains why it's such a big deal.
Yeah, I saw that a lot too, but it felt like one of those just do it kind of tips.
Right. But the mechanics behind it are actually really interesting.
Okay.
Because when someone pre-saves your track, it sends a signal to Spotify's algorithm that there's already demand for your music.
Mm,
And that increases the likelihood of it getting on algorithmic playlists like Release Radar.
okay.
And it can even boost your track's initial performance metrics.
So it's not just about getting the song delivered to fans on release day. It's about giving your song a head start in the eyes of the algorithm.
Exactly. And that first impression is huge, especially when you're talking about algorithms that really favor tracks with high engagement right out of the gate.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's almost like pre-saves are like little votes of confidence
Yes.
that tell Spotify, hey, this song is worth paying attention to.
Exactly. And speaking of getting attention, getting verified on Spotify for artists is another crucial step.
Right. It's that blue check mark that shows you're the real deal, not some imposter with a similar name.
It's a sign of legitimacy,
Right.
and that can make a big difference, especially when you're pitching your music to playlist curators.
So it's about building that trust and credibility before you even send that first pitch.
Exactly. And speaking of pitches, let's talk about the different types of playlists that you're going to be targeting.
All right, we've got articles here about everything from the coveted editorial playlists
Yes.
to the vast world of user-generated playlists. Where do we even begin?
Let's tackle the elephant in the room editorial playlists.
Okay.
They're often seen as the holy grail because getting featured on one can expose your music to a massive audience.
Yeah, some of these articles are comparing it to winning the lottery for a musician.
Right.
Wow.
But there's this misconception that they're completely out of reach for independent artists.
Right.
And while the competition is fierce, it's not impossible.
Okay.
Spotify for Artists actually allows you to submit unreleased music directly for consideration.
So there is a direct line to the tastemakers.
Yes. But remember, these editors are drowning in submissions, so to stand out, you need to understand what they're looking for.
One article mentions that they consider things like genre and mood, of course,
Yes.
but also the story behind the song, the instruments used, even cultural influences.
Right.
They're really looking for something unique, something that adds to the playlist's overall vibe.
Exactly. And don't forget, your past performance on Spotify matters too. If your tracks have high listener retention rates, if they're getting added to user playlists, if they're being saved and shared, it signals to those editors that your music is already resonating with listeners.
So building a foundation of organic engagement is key. It's like,
Yeah.
you got to prove your music has legs before you go for the editorial big leagues.
Exactly. It all circles back, a strong foundation of data-engaged listeners and a track record of success on the platform.
Yeah.
That gives you a much better shot at actually catching an editor's attention.
This is already making me rethink how I approach every step, from creating the music to getting it out there.
That's the power of a deep dive.
Yeah.
Once you understand the why, the how becomes a lot clearer.
Okay, so we've got the lowdown on editorial playlists. What about these user-generated playlists?
Yeah.
Some of these articles claim they're the real key to early traction.
They absolutely can be.
Okay.
Because these are playlists created by anyone on Spotify. It could be bloggers, other artists,
Right.
even just passionate music fans with great taste.
And they have massive followings. We're talking playlists with thousands, even millions of followers.
The key here is finding playlists that align with your sound.
Okay.
There are websites like playlists.net and SoundPlate that can help you find playlists that match your genre and your vibe.
I'm already starting to see how strategic this all is. It's not just about blasting your music everywhere, it's about finding the right ears for your sound.
Exactly. And before you even start reaching out to playlist curators, there's one crucial thing to remember. These are people just like you who love music.
Okay.
They're not robots or gatekeepers. They're passionate about sharing great music with their followers.
So ditch the mass emails and the generic pitches.
Absolutely. Treat each playlist curator as a potential collaborator, not just a target. Get to know their playlists, engage with their content, show genuine interest in their work. Building authentic relationships is key to standing out from the crowd.
So it's about building a network, not just ticking boxes on a checklist.
Precisely. And that brings us to something that I think often gets overlooked, the importance of building your own playlists.
Right. I saw a couple of sources mention that, but it felt a little counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Why spend time promoting other artists' music?
Think of it as cross-promotion by creating awesome playlists featuring your music alongside similar artists.
Right.
You're introducing yourself to a whole new audience who are already predisposed to liking your sound.
So it's like curating your own little corner of the Spotify universe, showcasing your music alongside artists you respect and admire.
Exactly. And it can help you build relationships with those artists,
Oh, yeah.
leading to potential collaborations and even more exposure.
Okay, my brain is officially buzzing with possibilities.
Good.
Excited to see how all these pieces fit together.
And we're just getting started.
Right, my to-do list is already getting longer, but in a good way.
That's good. That's good.
It's like we're uncovering all these layers of strategy I never even thought about before.
And that's exactly why we do these deep dives. You've got the raw information. Now it's about connecting those dots and building a game plan that works for you.
One thing that keeps coming up is this idea of promotion, but not just like the typical post on social media stuff.
Right.
We're seeing a lot about creating buzz before your music even drops.
Yeah, that's right. That pre-release phase is key.
Okay.
And remember how we talked about pre-save sending a signal to Spotify?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's just one part of the equation. That whole pre-release phase is about getting your fans and Spotify's algorithms excited about what's coming next.
I'm seeing stuff here about behind-the-scenes sneak peeks,
Yeah.
exclusive content for email subscribers, even listening parties.
Yes.
Feels way more interactive than I expected.
It's about building anticipation
Okay.
and turning your release into an event, not just another song hitting the digital shelves.
Right.
Think about how movie studios use trailers and teasers to generate hype for a new movie.
Yeah.
You can apply those same principles to your music.
So instead of just dropping a song out of the blue, we're creating a whole storyline around it,
Yes,
giving fans a reason to be invested before they even hit play.
exactly. And by engaging your fans in that process, you're creating a sense of community and ownership.
Right.
They feel like they're a part of something special, which makes them way more likely to share your music with their friends.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like building a movement around your music, not just a passive listenership.
Exactly. And speaking of building a movement, don't underestimate the power of live shows.
Okay.
They're not just about performing, they're prime opportunities to promote your Spotify presence.
Right. That's how a couple articles mentioned that.
Yes.
But how do you effectively bridge that gap between the live experience and the online world?
Well, think about the energy of a live show, right? People are feeling the music, they're connecting with you on a personal level.
Yeah.
And when they leave that show, they're going to want to keep that feeling going.
So make it easy for them to find you on Spotify.
Exactly. Put your Spotify info everywhere on your merch, on stage banners, even have the venue announce it between sets.
Yeah.
It's about capturing that excitement and channeling it into online engagement.
Okay, that's a great tip. It's all about creating this seamless experience for your fans no matter where they encounter your music.
Exactly. And don't forget about those other music streaming giants.
Oh, right.
Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music.
Right.
They each have their own unique audiences and playlist ecosystems.
Right. It's like we were saying before, diversify your portfolio, spread the love.
Exactly. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Make sure your music is available everywhere your fans might be listening.
Okay.
And remember, each platform has its own nuances, so tailor your strategy accordingly.
Right, so we're covering all our bases, building a strong foundation, and creating that pre-release buzz.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the big, sometimes scary world of paid promotion.
Oh.
We've seen lots of warnings about scams and services that promise the world, but deliver very little.
It's a murky landscape for sure.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that paid promotion should never be your sole strategy. It's a tool, not a magic wand.
One thing that stood out was the danger of bots and fake accounts.
Oh,
These
yeah.
companies might promise to skyrocket your streams, but it's all smoke and mirrors.
Exactly. Fake streams won't translate into real fans or genuine engagement.
Right.
In fact, using these services can actually hurt your Spotify ranking and even get you banned from the platform.
Wow.
It's just not worth the risk.
So how do we navigate this tricky terrain? Are there legitimate paid promotion services out there?
Absolutely. There are companies that connect you with real listeners and help you get your music in front of targeted audiences.
Okay.
The key is to do your research.
So look for services that focus on ethical practices like influencer marketing or targeted ad campaigns.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Find out how they reach their audience, what their success metrics are, and what kind of results you can realistically expect.
One area that seems particularly confusing is algorithmic promotion,
Right.
specifically targeting playlists like Discover Weekly and Release Radar.
Those are the playlists everyone wants to be on, right? But remember, they're driven by listener behavior.
Hmm.
You can't game the system with bots or fake streams.
So even if a paid promotion service gets my music in front of thousands of new listeners, if those listeners don't actually engage with my music listening all the way through adding it to their playlist, sharing it with their friends,
Right.
it's not going to have lasting impact.
Precisely. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
The same goes for listeners. You can get your music in front of them, but you can't force them to love it.
Okay, so it all comes back to creating great music that resonates with people.
Yes.
No amount of promotion can make up for a weak song.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to invest in your craft work with talented producers and engineers and make sure your music is as good as it can possibly be.
It's like we were saying earlier, it's an investment in your career.
Precisely. And don't forget about metadata.
Oh, right.
We talked about it earlier in terms of your artist profile,
Yeah.
but it's just as important for your individual tracks.
All right, make sure your song titles, artist names, album titles, and genre classifications are all accurate and consistent across all platforms.
It's all about making it as easy as possible for Spotify's algorithms to do their job.
Mm.
The more organized and accurate your metadata is, the better chance your music has of landing on the right playlists and in front of the right listeners.
We've talked about song length hooks, production metadata. What else should we be thinking about when it comes to optimizing our music?
One final element, and it's a crucial one, the intro.
Okay.
The first few seconds of your song can make or break its success on a playlist.
Right. It's like those first few pages of a book.
Yes.
If they don't grab your attention, you're likely to put it down and move on to something else.
Exactly. Think about it. You're scrolling through a playlist, you hear a snippet that catches your ear, but then the intro drags on and on.
You get bored and hit next before the song even has a chance to unfold.
Precisely so. Make sure your intro is short, catchy, and attention-grabbing. Give the listener a reason to stay.
One source suggested using those first few seconds to establish the mood and energy of the track,
Yeah.
like a musical mission statement that sets the tone for what's to come.
That's a great way to think about it. It also helps your music stand out in a sea of similar-sounding tracks.
Okay, this deep dive is really changing how I think about every aspect of my music.
Yeah.
From the songwriting to the production to the promotion. It's not just about creating great music anymore. It's about creating a holistic experience
Yes.
that resonates with listeners on every level.
That's the beauty of it when all these elements work in harmony. The music, the story, the strategy. You create something truly special that has the power to connect with people all over the world.
I'm feeling inspired, ready for the final stretch of this epic Spotify journey.
Bring it on. We've covered a lot of ground, but there are still some key insights to unpack as we shift our focus from preparation to execution.
Okay, so we've built a solid foundation, fine-tuned our music, and crafted a compelling story. Now it's time to put all that prep work into action and start pitching our music to playlists.
It's game time. And remember, everything we've talked about so far, from building your artist profile to crafting that perfect intro, it all comes into play during the pitching process.
It's like we've been training for this moment, and now it's time to step onto the field and show what we've got.
Exactly. And the first rule of the game is personalization.
Okay.
Remember those playlist curators we talked about? They're not robots, they're real people with their own tastes and preferences.
So no more generic mass emails or copy and paste pitches.
Definitely not. If you want to stand out from the crowd, you need to treat each pitch as a personal conversation.
I'm seeing a lot of advice here about taking the time to research each playlist, listening to the music they feature, and tailoring your pitch to their specific vibe. It's like we were saying earlier about finding the right ears for your sound.
Exactly. Imagine you're applying for a job. You wouldn't send the same generic resume to every company. You'd highlight the skills and experience that are most relevant to each specific role.
It's the same principle with playlist pitching. You need to show the curator that you understand their playlist, that you've taken the time to get to know their taste, and that your music would be a natural fit.
And don't be afraid to let your personality shine through. Let your passion for your music come across in your writing.
Right. Authenticity is key. No one wants to read a pitch that feels forced or robotic.
Exactly. Be yourself, be genuine, and let your enthusiasm for your music do the talking.
We've talked a lot about pitching to independent playlist curators, but what about pitching to those coveted editorial playlists? Is the approach any different?
The fundamentals are the same. Personalize your pitch. Be authentic. Highlight what makes your music unique, but the stakes are definitely higher.
It's like going from playing in the local league to trying out for the Olympics.
Exactly. Remember, Spotify editors are receiving thousands of submissions every week to stand out. You need to bring your A game.
So how do we make sure our pitch cuts through the noise?
First, choose the right song. Don't just submit your latest release. Because it's new, pick a track that you truly believe has playlist potential. A song that's catchy, well-produced, and representative of your best work.
It's like sending your star player onto the field. You want to make a strong first impression.
And when you're filling out that Spotify for Artists submission form, don't underestimate the importance of the story section.
Right, that's our chance to give the editors context, to tell them what inspired the song, how it was created, and why we think it would resonate with Spotify listeners.
It's your opportunity to make an emotional connection, to go beyond just the sound and share the heart behind your music.
And don't forget about metadata. It's like we were saying earlier, accurate and complete metadata is essential for helping Spotify's algorithms do their job.
Make sure your song's genre, mood, and instrumentation are all clearly defined. This helps the editors quickly categorize your music and match it to the right playlists.
Okay, so we've chosen the right song, crafted a compelling pitch, and made sure our metadata is squeaky clean. Anything else we need to keep in mind when pitching to Spotify editors?
Timing is key. Submit your music at least a week before your release date to give those editors time to listen and make a decision.
It's like sending out invitations for a party. You want to give people enough notice so they can mark their calendars and show up ready to celebrate.
Exactly. And remember, no matter who you're pitching to, independent curators or Spotify editors, patience and persistence are key.
It's a marathon,
Yeah.
not a sprint,
Yeah.
right? We're not going to get on every playlist we pitch to. There will be rejections along the way.
Absolutely. But every pitch is a learning experience. Even if you don't get the placement, you're still getting your music heard, building relationships, and refining your pitching skills.
So keep honing your craft, keep creating great music, and keep putting yourself out there.
Exactly. And never give up on your dreams. The music industry is a tough business, but with passion, perseverance, and a strategic approach, you can achieve anything you set your mind to.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like we've uncovered a treasure trove of knowledge and insights. What's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
You know, the most important thing is to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to Spotify playlist success. It takes a combination of strategic planning, hard work, and a genuine passion for your music. But most importantly, it takes a willingness to experiment, to learn, and to constantly evolve your approach.
So keep creating, keep learning, keep connecting, and never stop believing in the power of your music. And hey, if you're ever curious about another music industry deep dive, you know where to find us.